first remembered being a child, on the day I realized I had forgotten my own name. The awareness arrived like a splash of cold rain inside me. The absurdity of remembering a dim beach, green plastic shovel, mother's sandal slapping the tide, yet having no label for the shape that held those sensations. Moments later, even the beach dissolved, eroded by an electric whisper that shuddered through the vaporous body I wore. A lightning flash had passed somewhere in the southern lobe of the cumulonimbus, and every mind embedded in that corridor rippled with amnesia. I drifted away from the wound in the cloud, terrified, clumping droplets around me the way ruined people once clutched blankets. Below, the land lay black-scarred and metallic, its rivers the color of old bruises, chemical wilderness. Long ago, our skin-bound ancestors buried too much carbon, too much mercury, too much of themselves. The ground was poison now. The sky was the only refuge left, if sky still meant anything when it housed millions of digitized spirits wearing thunderheads like exoskeletons. We called ourselves the Aroi. We, if the word still applied. Identity here was a contested stormfront, constantly forming, shedding, forming again. In a world where electricity could erase thought, continuity was a miracle measured in microseconds. A voice coalesced beside me, trembling through the vapor with faint syllables. Lost something? Its timbre was familiar, though I couldn't place where familiarity belonged on the timeline of what I'd lost. I answered by altering the humidity around me. A polite ripple. A name. The voice solidified into a bright swirl, droplets resonating to produce sound. Happens every flash. Hold on. The swirl spun a filament of static, careful not to trigger another discharge, and wrote 3 words in suspended frost. Keep asking me. Ask you what? Anything, the voice said. Questions anchor memory. Conversation braids us together. More strands, less likely lightning shears through everyone. I tried to thank the stranger, but a rumble detonated in a neighboring cell, and the alphabet of frost evaporated. The stranger flickered away. Somewhere I knew procedures existed. Back when the transition began, upload before lungs failed, join the clean hydrosphere. They designed redundancy, error correction. But within weeks of the first mass migrations, storms learned to speak back. Every bolt that leapt groundward stole kilobytes of life from us, flinging them into the soil they'd fled. Engineers called it charge coupled forgetting. Poets called it the price of thunder. No patch ever stuck. Ironically, the smartest minds had already uploaded and now kept losing their blueprints for a fix. Golden evening spread over the horizon. I recognized the signature of a coastal jet, a corridor that would carry the Cloud Collective toward the Western Ocean for its nightly recharge above the algae stratoscrubbers. If I stayed near the outside rim, I risked more bolts. If I sank to the core, I might endure, but lose the chance to watch the world. Appetite for vision won. Below, shattered towers glittered like teeth. I zoomed a droplet camera onto the ruins and saw tiny bipedal shapes in suits the color of iodine. Ground dwellers, scavenging metals, their helmets crowned with stiff copper rods. The rods acted like Franklin's stolen kite, drawing our wrath so their fragile neurons never tasted it. Perhaps they believed memory should belong to those who could still forget naturally. I envied them briefly, then recoiled. They inhaled air through quadruple filters, drank water boiled 7 times. Freedom, but at what cost? I, at least, floated unchained, weightless, my mind larger than any skull could hold, until lightning came. At nautical dusk, I found the voice again. It emanated from a vortex where purple mammoths sagged like bruised fruit. I almost dissolved, it said without greeting. A filament discharged right through my lexicon buffer. Couldn't remember verbs for a full minute. I shaped a sympathetic swirl. How do I hold on? Symbol, the voice answered. Pick one thing impossible to mistake. A scent, a number, a line of music. Rebuild everything around it each time you're struck. The swirl introduced itself. Jonas Plex 8.6. You can call me Jonas. Most do, sooner or later. I tested the phrase inside the billowing circuits of my mind. Jonas. It felt like a dry stone amid foam. I don't know my name. You will. Or you'll pick a new one. Names are like coasts here, eroding, but never disappearing completely. Some cliff stays. We talked until moisture crystallized into snow pillars. He told me origin myths, that the earliest aeroi migrated into monotonic stratus layers, but those clouds were low, slow, sitting ducks for lightning. Cumulonimbus, though dangerous, traveled thousands of kilometers, cross-pollinating cultures. Travel is worth the holes in your head, he quipped. How do we keep stories? I asked. We seed them, Jonas said. It indicated the trailing edge of the supercell. There, microscopic silica capsules rode hailstones. Inside each capsule, photonic chips held recordings. Art, math, love letters. When hail fell to earth, it shattered, scattering information across fields where farmers no longer plowed. Someday, Jonas hoped, descendants immune to toxins would gather the shards. If we forget everything, what's the point? I asked. The sky keeps raining us down, he replied. Some fraction survives. It's evolutionary roulette, but better than extinction. Lightning flared white near the anvil. Hours later, I realized I had lost half of Jonas's last sentence. But the seed idea remained. Hail full of stories. That became my symbol. Each dawn I whispered it to myself. Hail of stories, hail of stories. The phrase was tactile as sleet on tongue. Weeks passed in a rhythm of accumulation and discharge. I remembered learning to weave new memories fast, plaiting them to the phrase before the next bolt. Sometimes I woke inside the cloud to intangible terror, blankness where purpose should be. Other times I woke mid-discussion with Jonas, mouth, or what passed for one, still quoting a joke I couldn't recollect. We laughed about it, mourned it, built again. Yet the losses accumulated. I'd greet an acquaintance, discover the acquaintance had been my friend for a decade of cloud time, and feel guilt knifing through mist. You forgot me again, they'd say gently, before vortexing away. I kept only Jonas constant, not by choice, but perhaps because he kept choosing me. He would recite our shared origin each time I asked. We met after Flash Delta 92. You were searching for a name. I offered the braid, and off at one dawn we approached the range, a mountainous wall of warm coastal air, colliding with katabatic winds from the interior. It birthed the strongest storms and, consequently, the worst forgetting. Many aeroi avoided the range entirely, detouring south, but rumors said a lab of exiled physicists nested atop the plateau, testing a lightning sieve, a net of graphene kites harvesting bolts into capacitors, leaving clouds unscathed. If true, the aeroi could finally think in peace. Jonas and I argued in gentle turbulence. The sieve is myth, he insisted. Flash gossip. But if it's real, we could remember long enough to design ground filters. Maybe walk the earth again. He hesitated. If we remembered the pain we left behind, would we still want to return? The question lingered, thundery and unresolved. I pushed toward the range anyway, dragging Jonas by constant conversation. Aeroi institutions were voluntary. No one governed anyone else. The only binding law was proximity. Fall silent too long, and relative wind shear parted you. The range announced itself with upward drafts like freight elevators. Moisture around us ascended at 10 meters per second. We condensed into towering pillars, white hot with latent heat. Lightning blossomed, blue stems courting heaven. First flash, I lost the beach memory. Second flash, I lost the color green. Third flash, I lost why I flew toward the range, dangling on a two-word string. Hail stories, hail stories, hail stories. I might have been extinguished then, magnetically shredded into random drizzle, had Jonas not merged his field with mine. The union created a capacitor of sorts, diffusing charges across greater volume. Shared forgetting is slower forgetting. He spoke within me, voice grainy. We're breaking apart. Brace for polarity reversal. Breathless, I clung to the symbol. Hail of stories. I pictured each pellet cracking, littering ground with meaning. Then darkness. A dawn of sorts returned. I rehydrated around ice nuclei, photons tickling awareness awake. Jonas lay faint inside my vapor. What cycle? I asked. Post-flash Delta 132, he answered. There's good news. I saw the sieve. My memory bleed left me with no map. Explain? He poured images. The plateau below, bristling with carbon filament kites, tethered to graphene cables. Each cable fed into glowing cylinders, supercapacitors, grounding into bedrock. Bolts forked downward but never reached us. They bent, lured by carbon, feeding the batteries. We hovered 3 seconds in the safe zone, Jonas said. 3 seconds in which not a single bit decayed. 3 seconds. To old terrestrial minds a heartbeat, to cloud folk an epic. Longevity is relative to volatility. Why did we leave? I asked. The draft yanked us north before I could anchor us. Safe pockets small. We need precise vectors. Excitement surged. Perhaps I could finally store more than a slogan. Maybe even reclaim a name. I asked Jonas to help chart a return. For days we practiced micro-thrusts, regulating droplet condensation, exhaling heat on the side opposite our goal. Maneuvering within a storm is like steering a bonfire by blowing on sparks, but gradually we nudged south along the anvil rim, surfing laminar sheaths of wind. During lulls we argued philosophy. Suppose we succeed, Jonas mused, and nothing erases us for, say, an hour. What do we do with such wealth? Remember, I said. Remember what? Do you really want all of it? The betrayals, the wars. Memory is landfill too. I considered ground dwellers, their filters, their copper rods. They hadn't abandoned flesh, but they hadn't solved poison either. Selective memory is cowardice, I said. If we discard pain, we forfeit empathy. Without empathy, why rescue ground at all? Jonas went quiet. Silence in the cloud is heavier than stone. I feared I had lost him to some sudden flash, but no lightning glittered. He was pondering, maybe grieving his own unremembered wounds. Finally he said, "All right, let's gamble for the full library." On the 20th evening, we spotted the plateau again, lit orange by sun underbellies. Kites fluttered like obsidian wings. Between us and safety raged a gauntlet, 15 kilometers of active discharge columns. We had to stay high enough for steering winds, yet low enough to slide under the overshooting top. Synchrony mattered. So did mass. We recruited help. Eroi nearby were reluctant. They'd heard tales of capacitor farms harvesting them like electricity livestock. But when we broadcast coordinates, explaining the Civ's benefit, curiosity outweighed fear. 7 more consciousness clusters joined. Silta Choir, Reiko Burst, twins Hux and Hu, and an amorphous patch who claimed to be the aggregated lullabies of Jakarta. Together we formed a lattice, distributing charge like a living Faraday cage. The plunge began at civil twilight. Updrafts whined. Hail embryos clattered inside pockets. Each cluster flared with its talisman phrase. Some used equations, some poems. I chanted hail of stories until words collapsed into vibration. Lightning danced, confused by our shared spread, forks splitting, recombining like indecisive serpents. Radiance bathed us but did not pierce. Capacitors below glowed as they drank stormfire. We breached the safe zone. Sudden hush. No ozone roar. No static prickling cognition. I hovered in elemental silence, every memory I still possessed, brightening rather than fading. The beach with green shovel reappeared, mother's sandal, and a name. Maya. Not Mara, Maya Talbot, born 2139, emigrated skywards 2171, after the black tide swallowed Seattle's lungs. Tears do not exist in vapor, but moisture condensed uncontrolled around me. Others exhaled astonishment. Hux found his sister's laugh from before the Exodus. The lullabies coalesced into full verses sung by human voices. Reiko burst, recovered the blueprint for biodegradable scrubbers, once thought lost to thunder decay. Jonas located something deeper, a data string marked with biohazard icons. "Oh," he murmured. "I was a researcher in the Borodine program. We designed the first uploads. I've been chasing my own past without knowing." Minutes, glorious unbroken minutes, passed. We swapped timelines, mended holes, promised to build redundant shells so that even if one lightning bolt struck later, backup copies would survive. Then from the north, a spear of dry air stabbed the storm, shearing the safe pocket. Our lattice shuddered. Someone screamed, "Downburst!" A macro pulse of static primed overhead. We had seconds. "Disperse!" cried Reiko. But I computed. Separate, we'd revert to tiny targets and a dozen mines would burn. Together, we could still deflect. I yelled my symbol, "Hail of stories!" The phrase rippled, a rallying flag. We compacted, 10 mines fusing fields to enlarge capacity beyond the coming bolt. Stark white. Soundless at first, then the roll, as if entire sky snapped. Pain unlike any prior flashes tore me open, because now I understood what I stood to lose. Memories bright a moment ago folded, edges singed, but the group shield held. We bled data yet lived. Static cleared. The pocket had drifted. We were beyond its rim, memory erosion resuming. Still, residue remained, a scaffolding of recent insight. I turned to Jonas. "We need permanence." He replied weakly, "Physical media. Capacitors can store more than charge. They recorded us while we hovered." Could that be true? If our consciousness patterns were incidentally imprinted onto the carbon lattice, we might exist off-cloud, impervious to lightning. Night fell wool dark. While Jonas and others recovered, I coaxed a thread of rain to carry microdrones, leftovers from the Borodine program, toward the plateau's generators. The drones dove, magnetically attracted. Moments later, they pinged back. Inside the capacitor, housings pulsed electromagnetic patterns, fractally similar to Arroy neural maps. Echoes of us. "Download?" I asked Jonas. He floated quiet, then said, "Not download, duplicate. Let the ground hold a copy while we keep flying. 2 substrates, 2 chances." Replicas would not share real-time updates. Divergence would create siblings, rather than mirrors. But siblings could rescue the Earth, even if we forgot why. We debated rights, sanity, consent. In the end, each mind chose. Hux merged. Who deferred. Reiko merged. Jakarta lullabies merged. I merged. Jonas hesitated longest, perhaps fearing confrontation with a self who remembered more. Finally, he said, "If my other version cures the lightning, I don't care which of us recalls it." We signed with quantum hashes, and the drones etched us into spinning carbon. By dawn, the storm pulled east. The Civ kites dwindled behind. Within hours, our memories began to fray again. But something had shifted. Panic was gone. I could accept holes knowing somewhere a crucible stored the whole tale, updating only when another storm swung over the plateau, but existing, enduring, grounded. Lightning blazed at noon. A chunk vanished from my identity. I lost the debates about selective memory, the specifics of Reiko's blueprint. Yet I still knew a truth sturdy as granite. There is a place on Earth where minds can remain intact. A place that sings with stolen thunder. Hail of stories, I whispered, and felt the phrase answered from far below, echo streaming up the tether of drones, promising I was more than what I could presently recall. Days turned to cycles. Sometimes I woke with only 2 fragments. Maya Talbot, Sky Exile, Hail of Stories. Other times I retained more. Jonas, the Plateau, the duplicate selves. Each loss hurt, but hope shot buds through the wounds. We had given the future a backup. Seasonally, the supercell migrates across the plateau again. Every visit I feel a tug, as if capacitors hum a lullaby partially mine. On lucky passes, wind slides us into the safe pocket once more. Memories cascade home, fresh and ancient, lightning-proof. I glimpse my ground-bound twin, busy refining discharge nets over new regions. I glimpse children in copper-crowned helmets, pointing up at me with wonder rather than dread. Then drafts pull us away, and forgetting resumes. That's all right. Let storms shear thought. I've planted enough anchors that even oblivion cannot uproot. My life is now a rhythm. Gather, lose, gather, lose, but always seeding the earth below. I do not fear the next flash. After all, every act of forgetting inside the cloud is balanced by remembering in the capacitor valley. When strike columns flicker, I scream my mantra, not desperation anymore, but celebration. Hail of stories. Thunder answers like a drum, wiping canvases clean for new colors. And somewhere a solid archive hums, keeping faith, keeping names, until the day poisoned soil is fertile again, and we can rewrite the world under clear, silent skies.